First, millions of Australians right now are struggling with the cost of living, not least of which the cost of power prices. And the sad thing is, it wasn't meant to be this way.
Get power prices down by $275 a year.
$275 a year. $275 a year.
Well, the cost of power hasn't gone down, it's gone up. Last week, Queensland energy companies revealed they had sent debt collectors to 12,000 householders who couldn't pay their electricity bills, and that was in the first 3 months of the year. The good news is, if you're one of those people struggling to pay your power bills, fear no more. The Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, went on the ABC last night. He's got a plan.
You can reduce your power bill very substantially by putting solar panels on your roof. Batteries are very expensive.
That's assuming you've got the money to put those panels on your roof. Let's talk about those people we're talking about facing those increases now without the capacity to move to solar in the short term. What advice do you have for them in the short term?
Well, I'm running through the options that you asked me about, Sarah, which is what options are available to families. And yes, things like solar panels and batteries are a big cost, but there is also support there.
What an absolute genius. So let me summarise the plan. Australians who can't afford their power bills should install solar panels, which they also can't afford. So by using money you don't have to buy solar panels you can't pay for, you'll reduce the cost of your electricity, thereby fulfilling the government's promise to lower prices. Now, I know what you're thinking. What if we can't all extend our mortgages to afford solar panels? When will the cost of power come down?
Can you forecast a time when power prices will start to come down?
Well, of course, power prices are fluctuating internationally. There's a lot of pressure coming out of Europe at the moment. There's a lot of changes in the European situation with the war in Ukraine, which we're monitoring closely, and we'll provide further updates, of course, on that as we can.
Power prices will come down when Russia say so. The problem with power is not this guy. It's not Chris Bowen's fault. He's not the issue. No, let me show you the real villain, the person who ate Chris Bowen's homework. It's this guy, Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is the one who is closing coal-fired power stations across the country. It's Vladimir Putin who's saying we can't access the ample supplies of gas beneath our soil. It's Russia's fault. When will prices come down? When Russia allow it. But Chris Bowen, he's on the job. He's monitoring the war in the Ukraine. And Liz, he's going to keep us updated.
Except that he's really not. Check out this graph of gas power prices, which, yes, certainly did spark during the war. You can see it right there. You don't have to wonder when that outbreak started. But look at that. They've come back down to pre-war prices. So why did we keep hearing from this government over and over again, oh, it's Ukraine, oh, it's Russia also? Maybe if somebody hadn't blown up the Nord Stream pipelines, we'd be sitting pretty. But that's another story for another day. But that just goes to show this is a complete furphy. They know that they just have to keep bantering about. It's one of three, Caroline, every single time. It's either the previous government's fault, doesn't matter what the problem is, it was the COVID pandemic, we've all been through a lot, or it's the war in Ukraine. These guys, whenever it comes to energy, hit the war in Ukraine button, and looking at that graph, it's an outright lie.
Well, it is absolutely. Like, this is the misinformation that we're all talking about, right? I watched that and I thought, Siri, show me drivel. Show me drivel. Unintelligible, confused, tone deaf, particularly for those Australians who are struggling. And I watched it and I just couldn't actually work out whether he's just really ignorant or he's actually being disingenuous.
Well, he was certainly sweating bullets.
I don't know.
He was certainly sweating bullets. He's like, you know, when you watch them in interviews like that and you're like, I know that even you don't believe what you're saying because it's so unbelievable. You're like, no, you're not even pulling this off.
And then they go and put a cap on wholesale gas prices.
Yes.
Which is not retail gas prices.
No.
Which is the one that we all pay. And there's plenty of other things that are going up, cost-wise. Labour costs are going up. not enough supply of gas, maybe, minor issue. So your pretty little cap on the wholesale prices is doing sweet Frederick Anna.
Have a listen to what Chris Bowen said when he was pushed further. Does he stand by his commitment to lower prices by $275 a year? Have a listen to what he said.
You campaigned on a promise of lowering electricity prices by 2025. Are you prepared to repeat that commitment and promise here?
Certainly. We were elected with a mandate to increase the proportion of renewables in our electricity grid because that's better for emissions and better for bills, and we're 100% committed to doing that. And yes, the modelling showed the impact of that policy by 2025.
Well, he snuck in there his excuse. If it doesn't happen, the modelling showed. So we can look forward to him saying, oh, the modelling.
It better jolly happen, because we all know in their October budget, they budgeted an unprecedented $25 billion for this renewable energy dream of theirs. $20 billion of that is going toward remaking our perfectly fine grid that just wasn't built to accommodate their flippin' renewables. So now we need an entirely new grid, of course. And I'm surprised you didn't go into more detail about all the subsidies. My point being, it's not getting cheaper. We are bleeding through the nose for this kind of expenditure.
Someone else is just
on their renew. Yeah, and that somebody else is us. So when they say we're going to get prices down, they mean by spending billions of your hard-earned taxpayer dollars on something that you never voted for. But anyway, and that's to say nothing of the solar subsidies. If you do want solar panels, if you don't want solar panels, you're still paying for somebody else's.
It's almost like the government need a distraction, Liz. Something to get our mind off power prices.
Interest rates.
Interest rates.
Interest
Anything else?
rates.
Cricket, maybe?
Cricket, maybe.